Welcome beautiful people, Acoustics here, remake of a legendary sci-fi horror game Dead Space, released earlier this year, was recently added to Xbox Game Pass. So I've decided to prolong a spooky season a little, and in this video we will talk about this iconic game. Let's get to it. If you've been following gaming news and trends, then you probably already know that remake of Dead Space that was released in January this year is a very decent game based on legendary original. And in this video I mostly wanted to talk about enigmatic and elusive Dead Space formula as a whole and how it works in this remake produced by Motive Studios in particular. Why Dead Space works that well while Callisto Protocol, for example, works very poorly as a horror sci-fi experience. Why a game released in 2008 and remastered in 2023 still have our feelings in its grip, why it still makes us wear diapers while playing it, and why it brings so much joy. I replayed the original Dead Space earlier this year and it mostly felt like the first time, because I wasn't remembering my actual first playthrough. I'm not sure I even finished it first time around. So Dead Space for me feels like a fresh experience overall. I wasn't replaying original games over and over for the last decade, and that makes me believe that I have a pretty fresh look on both original and remake. Let's start by shortly discussing what remake actually brings to the table. What are the main changes comparing to the original? Game world is now completely seamless, there are no loading screens whatsoever. Ishimura now is a kind of an open world, you can go to any of its sections wherever you want, once you have unlocked them. And this thing, where you can instantly and seamlessly continue playing after you open the game after the break, is kind of mind-blowing. It was making me smile all the way to the end. Isaac now can take his helmet off and speak. Our protagonist now feels more alive and believable, like most of the characters are, really. The thing I'm grateful for though is that Isaac talks just enough, and mostly in story sequences and cutscenes. He doesn't make stupid remarks about everything he sees or doesn't give you hints on how to solve some puzzles like a lot of characters in other games do. Thank you, Motive. They obviously remade some of the levels, improved and made them more complex, which is great in my opinion. There are also new small fuse box puzzles, which lets you decide what systems to power and what to shut down, which sometimes lead to a very interesting gameplay situations. There are also new side quests that adds a lot to lore of the game. They let you learn more about different characters, their motivation or plans. I actually enjoyed those a lot, except maybe for the security one. So, even though there are a lot of changes, they are kind of small and not in any way ruin the original vibe or feel of the game. They are mostly directed to freshen up the facet, improve some outdated systems and enhance visuals, which are totally beautiful by the way. Who knew that someone in Electronic Arts still remember how to utilize Frostbite, right? And despite all of those changes, they are in no way interfere or ruin core features of the original that made it no less than legendary. So what are those core features that made Dead Space a phenomenon? Let's break it down. Well, I'm sure most of you know how the story of Dead Space goes, but I will still go over it real quick. In the distant future, humanity learned how to extract minerals from inhabitable planets from space by using special giant spaceships called planet crackers. One of the biggest and also the first one is USG Ishimura, started extraction of minerals on a distant planet called Aegis 7. But soon enough, all the comms coming from the ship stopped and Concordance Extraction Corporation, CEC for short, its owner, sent a repair crew to check on USG Ishimura. This repair crew consists of a few people, one of them is our protagonist, engineer Isaac Clarke. But for him, it's not just a job. His beloved one, Nicole Brennan, is a part of the crew aboard Ishimura. Right after a very rough landing, our repair crew got attacked by unknown alien monsters. Ship on which Isaac arrived is destroyed, almost all Ishimura systems are down or broken, ship's corridors are filled with alien monsters. Here comes the best thing about Dead Space plot. It's very down to earth. If you can say so about sci-fi horror thriller based on a spaceship, of course, our crew just trying to survive through this hell, applying their knowledge and expertise as hard as they can. For starters, Isaac has to repair one Ishimura system after another just to prevent it breaking up in pieces. Then we need to find out what the hell is going on in this ship, why are there aliens, who are they, and why Ishimura is shattering. But here comes one scary choice. On one hand, we have old and breaking ship which is infested with hostile aliens. On the other hand, we have infinite cold dead space. Choice is very unpleasant, yet kinda obvious. And what makes this story very down to earth is another main character of the game, USG Ishimura herself. All of what's happening is very reasonable and believable. Flagship feels like a living and breathing creature, and in every sequence where Isaac fixes some ship system, it feels real. It feels like your situation really improved a little. Every system in Ishimura, such as a tram or asteroid defense system or centrifuge fuel and engine system, feel like a real engineering part of the ship, without which Ishimura is going to die. Basically, Dead Space is an engineering problem-solver simulator with some minor obstacles in form of hostile aliens on one side and dead cold space on the other. And closer to the end of the game, or rather somewhere in the last quarter or a third of the game, underlying storyline starts to creep out on surface. It adds a lot of mysticism and animalistic horror, and it steals your confidence of survival bit by bit by bit. Overall, a great sci-fi horror story, one of the best in fact. But those text logs, man, they will make me cry someday. When will game developers finally come up with something new? Almost forgot to tell you about Mr. Clark. In my opinion, he's one of the best protagonists in video games ever. Also, Half-Life is my favorite game. Maybe my knees are just weak for silent engineer guys. Well, who knows. Anyway, Isaac is a very skilled and cold-blooded engineer. He knows his craft perfectly. He doesn't hesitate when it's time to make a decision. He uses all available instruments and tools the best he can. When you think that this is a dead end, he's still able to find a solution, and rather engineering one. He's also not a superhero, he's not chosen, none of that nonsense. I'd say in the remake he became a little more sentimental and hopeful, but that actually works even better for him. Perfect protagonist for a sci-fi horror story. Now, let's talk about fear. For a long time now, fear is born in the unknown has been kind of a motto for a good horror books, movies and games. And Dead Space developers took that motto very seriously and deliberately managed that feeling of the unknown that makes us experience fear almost every minute of the game. But how did they achieve that exactly? As you may understand already, when some monster jumps out from the dark corner is not when fear is born, but rather when it dies. With monster popping out of nowhere, our body produces burst of adrenaline and fear got replaced with action. So we have to look elsewhere. I would say horror management in Dead Space consists of 4 main components. First, it's visuals. Visuals in the game are both very believable and very limited. There is plenty of room for our imagination. At first, game feeds our brain with some creepy and horrific images, necromorphs, dismembered bodies and scary blood writings on the wall. Then it lets our imagination do the thing. Remastered's visuals are especially good, nearly perfect work with the lights, ambient, dust and textures. Second is sound design. Sound design is impressive as hell. It was perfect in the original, and here it feels like it became even better. You always feel a breath of danger down your neck. Is there someone in the vent? Or is someone behind the next turn? Is someone behind? Background music is also perfectly composed and orchestrated. Squeaky violence, dramatic keys and threatening drums. When you hear music got louder, man, you better run. Third is immersion. This game does so many things correct that immersion is just on another level. First of all, it's environment and environmental storytelling. All of Ishimura's sections and rooms tell you a particular story, and most of the time you read that story between the lines. You don't have to look for it or specifically concentrate on it, but eventually it crawls under your skin and does its dirty work. Game's interface is a big help in this too. Game has so-called diegetic interface, which means that all of the interface is a part of the game universe. Isaac's health bar is part of the suit, all of the text, audio and video messages are part of the suit's interface too. Doors open prompts and even save points are part of the environment. Brings immersion to another level. Fourth is that Dead Space doesn't let you get used to the fear or get comfortable enough with it. It plays with your brain. Let me ask you a question. If Necromorph jumped out of the vent 2 times in a row, will it jump out for a 3rd time too? Right? And in Dead Space, nothing is guaranteed or predictable. It may jump out for the 3rd time, or it may jump out the moment you turn your back to the vent, being absolutely sure that there is no one there, or it may jump from the ceiling, or never jump at all. Game always tries to spook you differently. At first it's just monsters and dim lights, then it's claustrophobic corridors and blinking lights, then it's some noise in the vents and shadows around the corner, then lights can go completely off and all you can see is a small circle highlighted by a flashlight beam. Then they send you to the open space with limited amount of oxygen. Then there is an engine room with unbearable sound of the engines where you can't trust your ears to locate the enemies. And this list of new circumstances goes on and on and on, and as a result you are getting scared all the freaking time. All of the components mentioned above, together with game pacing, polished nearly to perfection, create an unforgettable horror experience. Chef's kiss. Talking about gameplay, I'm sure most of you are well aware of Dead Space combat system and gameplay loop, but I would still like to go over it for a complete review experience. First and foremost, whoever come up with an idea of tactical dismemberment is a genius. It is such a unique and game-defining feature that I could sing praises for it all day long. To be clear, tactical dismemberment is a mechanic that requires you to cut off monsters' limbs instead of shooting them in the head or in the chest like in most games. Necros don't give a single damn about you shooting them in the chest. Shooting their legs off, on the other hand, will make a world of difference. Difference between life and death. The game also presents us with an arsenal of weapons/engineering tools, all of which are very unique in their impact on the enemies. We have classic plasma cutter that is basically the best weapon in the game. It allows you to cut necro limbs with swiftness and precision. We have pulse rifle. Think of it as your go-to space Gatling gun. It spews out round faster than you can say necromorph. Perfect for those moments when you're surrounded and need to paint the walls with plasma. We have a line gun. It's basically the plasma cutter's big brother. We have remote control disc ripper, well, a buzzsaw of some sort, which is my favorite weapon. It's perfect for those tight corridors where things go crazy in the dark. We also have contact beam and the force gun, which I personally never used, but may try them on my next playthrough. There is also a flamethrower. Don't. Just don't. I enjoyed slaying necromorphs in this game a lot. I felt different impact from all of the weapons that I used. I saw damage I dealt to the monsters illustrated on their bodies. With each shot there was a new mark on their ugly alien legs, hands and body. And there are also two handy tools in our arsenal as well. Stasis, which is basically freeze, and Kinesis, which allows you to pull objects towards you and push them away with pretty strong force. And they are serving not only as weapons, they also helps you solve different puzzles during the game, repair Ishimura systems and do other stuff. They also perfectly work with the world of the game too. If you happen to cut off blade hand of Necromorph, you can use Kinesis to pull his blade hand to you and then slay the monster by throwing his blade back at him. Isn't it marvelous and fantastic? Most of the environment is also interactive, so you can throw almost everything at Necromorphs. It may not be the most effective way to fight them, but still great. What also adds to the feeling of constant horror and anxiousness is lack of resources. If you're not a professional at this game and don't know all of its secrets, you always feel that there is not enough ammo, not enough medkits, not enough money or power nodes. I mean, yeah, game has a smart loot system, but if you don't abuse it really hard, you still have a constant feeling that ammo will be depleted any second now and you will find yourself in somewhat unpleasant situation. All of the game systems work almost perfectly combined. Together they build ideal gameplay fusion where you don't feel any gaps between those systems. All of them create excellent seamless horror and combat experience. Now let's recap. Dead Space 2023 is an exemplary remake of classic, and not just a classic but legendary and one of the best games ever classic. Everything that was possible to improve got improved. Everything that worked perfectly stayed untouched. And as a result, we have an even better version of Dead Space 2008. Great work Motive Studios and, God help me, Electronic Arts. Dead Space's story is simple yet very mystic and intriguing. It starts with simple tasks and straight motivations and ends up in a very tangled ball of story threads. Improvements to Isaac and Ishimura, two main characters of the game, fit the game perfectly, making it even more scary and immersive. Game excels at keeping players scared and terrified all the time. You will never feel too good or too comfortable during your playthrough. Isn't it a perfect horror game? Gameplay is on par with horror component. Great arsenal of weapons, good tools to use both in combat and outside of it. Environment and our character perfectly blend together, forming a unified and complete sci-fi experience. My scores go like this. Gameplay 5 out of 5. Visuals and sound 4 out of 5. Story 4 out of 5. Fun 5 out of 5. With a total score of 9 out of 10. I've had a great time playing this game, and honestly I could recommend it to anyone who even remotely interested in horror games or other horror mediums. I would even go as far as recommending to buy it for a full price if you wanna play it right now. Luckily, those people who have Xbox Series or PC can subscribe to Xbox Game Pass and enjoy the game for $10 a month. Remake of Dead Space is still the best horror game of the year, maybe even this decade. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Thank you for making us whole again. Stay curious and happy gaming.
Click the like button if you liked the video, leave a comment in the comment section below, and please consider subscribing to this channel if you would like to see more videos like this one.